for coming to this webcast. Good morning, good evening to folks in Europe, and hope everybody's having a great day. We're almost through another week here, so thanks for attending. And yeah, so there's definitely a lot of material to cover today, and I'm going to try to blast through it. If the audio quality goes, too far south because maybe I'm speaking too fast and just, forcing too many words through the system, maybe that'll cause problems. I don't know. Just let us all know, and we kind of already covered that anyways. So yeah, so this is effective user interface. All you really need to know about UX, and it's really kind of to complement the book that was just published by O'Reilly that I co-authored, called EffectiveUI: The Art of Building Great User Experiences in Software. And I think I got that right, that tagline. So the book itself. This is me, by the way. I'm a lead user experience architect at a company called EffectiveUI, and the book is kind of our perspective on what it takes to build really great software that people like to use. And our slogan is that people deserve better software. And a little bit about my background. I've come from, I haven't always worked in service agencies. Most of my experience has actually been working for kind of larger companies, everything from e-commerce, online travel, to desktop software. I've spent a significant amount of time in desktop software, and I've dealt with legacy user populations that you have to be, you don't want to upset, and I've been there and I've seen a lot of the politics, and I've learned some tricks along the way, and kind of some things that'll help me succeed. And the interesting thing about working at Effective is that as an agency, we get to work in a lot of different verticals and on a lot of different projects. So we get to continually try new things again and again. And I think we've worked on well over 250 projects in the 5 years that we've been around. It got started as a black box development agency at Adobe, and so we've got to try a lot of things. And when we wrote the book, EffectiveUI, I think that there were a lot of very tactical things. Here's how you wireframe. Here's when to use, radio buttons versus check buttons. Those kind of books are there. But really, like pushing a project through from beginning to launch, and then the aftermath of launch, which is something that can also be quite a bit of work, is something that hasn't really been covered in a ton of books. So that's what the purpose of the book was, and the idea behind it, and kind of some of our takes on how we've been successful in that so far. So this is to complement that. It's not really an overview of the book, but it's additional ideas and thoughts. And I've also tried to extract kind of what are some laws, general principles that we can glean from the book and from our experiences. But first, before we jump into the laws of UX, let's go ahead and define UX. And there's a lot of different definitions for user experience, and I think that these are definitions that suit us pretty well, or that we have liked so far. So user experience is a person's perceptions and responses that result from use or anticipated use, which I think is an interesting clarification of a product, system, or service. So even anticipation of use affects their experience. On Wikipedia, user experience, or UX, is about how a person feels about using a system. And I think that word feels is really interesting too. I think that usability, this kind of empirical, kind of discipline coming from, ergonomics and earlier ideas, sometimes, goes a little bit closer to, these kind of empirical, data-driven studies of, what's faster to read, what's a quicker way to absorb information, that kind of stuff. But, I think that we've seen trends in the last few years, examining more how people feel about things. There's an emotional component involved. Jared Spool, UX answers a question. Did the user have a delightful, as delightful an experience as possible? And that word delightful is kind of funny. I think that when we talk about doing our taxes, how delightful is that ever really going to be? And a lot of software could be about really painful and sad stuff. That's also something to keep in mind. But delightful, I guess, as possible. But I think that gets, to the point of software doesn't have to be painful. The software itself doesn't have to cause misery, even if what you're doing may be something that's not, it's miserable. But the software itself doesn't have to, increase that. Apple user experiences for products, for Apple products, encompasses, and here they go into, it's visual, it's interactive, it's, behavior, and how it assists, assistive capabilities. So what it does and what it allows people to accomplish. And really, the way that we kind of boil that together is user experience is really a hyper-focus on user adoption. That's the way we think about user experience. User experience is very kind of subjective. So just to kind of give you some other ideas of what user experience is and how simple it is, we have Information Architects Inc. have put this Venn diagram together to illustrate, user experience is really, it's basic, it's easy. Everybody should be able to get it, right? And that's why we have good user experiences everywhere in software and the things that we have to interface with. And here's from Jared Spool. He identified here's some core skills that a good user experience practitioner should have to make a really great user experience. So here's just a few things, and I'm sure that all of these people are there's a lot of folks out there, right, who have these core skills. Maybe not necessarily. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. From a technology perspective, maybe user experience is just about the type of technology you pick, right? You just take a few of these and link them together, and voila, you've got a fabulous user experience. Well, that doesn't really work either, although a lot of companies try, right? So UX is really subjective. It's a spectrum, right? And from awful displeasure, creating hate and anger and all kinds of really hostile, negative emotions, all the way towards pure joy. I think that something else that's interesting about kind of this graph is that we're showing there's kind of like a continuity between awful software, bad software. So all these like negative things are like, this is software that we're talking about, but then the fun things and the real joy comes from movies and video games, right? We're out of the realm of software because we can't have fun or joy in software. I don't think that's necessarily true, although I guess video games is software. But user experience is contextual, and I think that it's subjective and contextual, and so I don't know if you have showbiz pizza. It's a lot like Chuck E. Cheese with a little bit of a like country twist to it, and if you walk into Showbiz Pizza and there's the animatronic jug band with Bubba Bear, and he's singing, some Lady Gaga tune, that's not going to map to what your expectations are. And so it may be funny, I guess, but, your experience isn't going to be that great. Even if you hate country music, you kind of expect it in that context. Or if you walk into some, bar in San Antonio and again, you just, I don't know. It's raining in San Antonio. It's all about context. So a lot of it's about context. So here's the video that following that video gaming metaphor. Gaming is not only when it's good, when it's done right, it's not only fun, but it's also incredibly immersive. And good user experience is engaging and immersive. And here's this really great video on immersion that Robbie Cooper put together, and you can find on the New York Times website. You can Google it. And these are kids playing video games, and they're totally immersed in these video games. They're just they're absorbed. A lot of these kids never blink, and there's no audio to accompany this. The audio is even it makes it borderline creepy. So I'm kind of sparing you guys the audio, but basically one of the components of making software that is very immersive is there's very little that's between these kids and the experience that they're having with the video game. They're not looking down at their hands to see where the buttons are. They've learned that. They've memorized that. And there's not they're not having to pause or break out of the engagement. So there's no roadblocks or barriers to their experience, and that's something that you should think about when you're building a workflow or when you're designing an experience. Is okay, where are we interrupting, and how are we potentially interrupting the user? So good UX also responds to user input with feedback. So a good analogy here is the buttons on an elevator, right? They light up. If they don't light up when we push them, we keep jamming on them until something else happens. We get feedback that the machine's moving, right? There's actually, I read an article about the buttons at crosswalks are mostly inactive, but there's that little bit of response that, okay, I have something to do, I can do something here. And the feedback is literally the clicking of the button in that case. But good UX is responsive. So showing somebody that something has happened. A good software analogy is I'm sure you've all seen the systems where you're submitting a form and there's a little text message saying, don't hit the submit button again because you may screw something up. And it's because, you hit submit and nothing's happening. And this has happened enough that enough people have screwed things up because they keep jamming on the submit button because there's been no feedback to them that it's working, it's processing. So you can design things differently to give people immediate feedback that things are working. UX is consistent across channels, so that consistency aspect not only is important just in the context of use, but also in the context of cross-channel experience or brand experience. This is where brand becomes really, really important and strong. You can strengthen your brand like National Geographic did with their magazine we all know and love, and when we did this, the whole history of National Geographic software, we basically wanted to map to that experience as much as possible, even in the packaging. And it wasn't even as much of a mandate from National Geographic as it was just, understanding that consistency of brand and experience across channel is also critical. UX is also about performance. So obviously, sluggish software, poor performing websites are not a good user experience. That actually ties in really well with UX helping users accomplish goals. This is kind of a silly image, but Homer's goal here, for anybody who hasn't really seen the episode, is his goal is always just to drink beer and have a buddy to drink beer with, and he gets a helper monkey, and he pretty much ruins this helper monkey, whose name is Mojo. I won't go into too many details, but performance is really linked to, the perception of performance is very much linked to the accomplishing of goals. So Jared Spool did a study where they looked at several websites and they asked people to rate how quick the pages loaded on these websites. Well, what they found was there's a lot of consistent feedback between a few of the websites. Some were perceived as being really slow, others seemed to be fast and optimized. And the researchers knew that really there's no difference between these websites. So what they dug a little further, and they realized that the websites that people thought were really slow were basically just requiring people more steps to complete to achieve their goals than the ones that they perceive as being fast. So if you're not helping users accomplish goals, you're also really hurting their perception of other factors of your software. So this is kind of an interesting, intuitiveness versus efficiency and familiarity versus innovation is really an interesting topic to me, because there's a balance and there's a time and a place for all of these things, right? So really intuitive software, a great example is a wizard approach, right? So that's where, step one, fill out these two forms and hit continue. And then, based on your answer, you may get a different question or whatever, but it steps you through and it spoon feeds you and hand holds you. And that's very intuitive. There's really nothing not to intuit. You just read the instructions and you go. As an example of really stepping somebody through. And that's great for somebody who is unfamiliar with a product, who's novice user, or something that only happens, very sporadically. Frequency is really, really low. But once you start dealing with expert users, efficiency becomes really much, much more important. And these are both like positive, good qualities of user experience, right? Intuitiveness, efficiency. But they have a context and a correct use. Same with familiarity versus innovation, right? Something that's really innovative. I think that it's interesting. We see these devices coming out, and we're still using a QWERTY keyboard on all of these touch devices, right? The QWERTY keyboard is kind of a mistake, the way that was set up. That wasn't intentional. That wasn't designed. That was a factor from mechanics. That was the typewriter and the way the keys were laid out. So we're still using that because it's so familiar, and who really would want to totally, reinvent the keyboard, although it's been tried several times, and there's actually some neat concepts around that. But the familiarity totally overrides innovation in certain tasks, again, like highly repetitive tasks, and also the degree of familiarity. Sometimes what is innovative, and this is really interesting, sometimes what is innovative is simply taking 2 or 3 familiar concepts and mashing them together, and that's something that you'll see a lot. So there's an interesting relationship between familiarity and innovation. Good UX is contextual, and we covered that. Good UX delivers relevant, valuable content. Here's an example of a calendar widget. It's right in the right place. Right? If I have to fill out dates, it's really cumbersome and tedious to, manually enter in stuff, especially if you're not really sure about date. If we're not living, breathing calendars. Some people are. Project managers can be that. But a lot of us aren't. And so this is really helpful. Relevant content, relevant features. In the right context. And also trustworthiness is a big one. And when we talk about user adoption, trustworthiness is important. This is, for any of you people who haven't used a Windows machine, this is the blue screen of death that you may see when your system shuts down and you lose all your work and you scream and cry. But this is all about being trustworthy. And if you have a system that's really acting up, and you see this a lot, your faith in that and your experience with that product is going to be poor. So just to cover, good user experiences from kind of our perspective are made up of these things. This is kind of how we think about good user experience. So now that we've talked about good user experience, let's talk a little bit about we know what user experience is. Let's talk about why it's important, right? So there's the way we think about it is that ROI is really the only measure of a great user experience. I mean, it's the most important one, especially for a services company that has to deliver ROI to our customers. And what's the main ingredient for ROI? Well, that's user adoption. User adoption is totally key. And user adoption, interestingly, can be looked at from a lot of different goals from an organization. So if you're trying to get your customers to self-serve, and there's a lot of people that end up doing that, you get a huge return on investment. If you're trying to get your employees to enter in like higher quality of data into their systems, and they end up doing that, guess what? ROI, return on investment. And the return on investment can be ridiculously good. User-generated content, process automation. If you get people to use your software, the software that you build will return to you on your investment. So investing in that good user experience is basically the hyper-focus on user adoption, right? That's UX design. So how do we achieve success in this? We're always on time, we're always on budget, and we never have any hard conversations, right? No, that's not true. That's a lie. This slide is a lie. This is always tough. Why do these things get off track? And why are projects typically late or over budget? And why do we end up in screaming matches and throwing sticky note pads at each other across the room? That never happens here at Effective, by the way. But so here's a picture of what your software might look like if you never have any of those things happen. I mean, and sometimes even when those things happen, we still end up with users, the person who's actually going to return on your investment. This is what they look like. They're bummed. But what if your users look like this? And this is a picture from some people that we built some software for. We built it for them, but of course another company was selling it. This is the end user, and they're stoked. They're happy. They're loving what they're doing. I don't know how many of you have heard of Yodlee, and this is if you have, then great. If you haven't, don't feel bad. They were founded in '99, about 200 employees, so good-sized company. They power 85% of online personal financial transactions. They're a financial company, and they're essentially an aggregator of financial data. And they raised, over 100 million in funding, and they pretty much focused on back-end services for financial institutions. And I don't know how many of you have heard of Mint, and my guess is that a lot more of you have heard of Mint. And Mint is basically the front end of Yodlee. Mint is just a great user experience plastered on to Yodlee's back end. And so if we look at the two companies, again, reviewing Yodlee, back-end focus, they've been in business for 10 years, 200 employees, lots invested, decent annual revenue, 16 million. It's not bad at all. And we look at Mint, and they were 2 years in business, 35 employees, much less invested, and look at how much they were acquired by Intuit for. Amazing return on investment by essentially focusing all of their effort on the user experience, making a really great user experience. And Intuit, for anybody who doesn't know, does Quicken, QuickBooks, etc. And they bought Mint for a reason. So IBM has this stat that for every dollar invested in usability returns between $10 and $100. And it's kind of an old stat, but it's something to consider. But IBM also doesn't really get it all the time, right? So we're looking at Lotus Notes here, and we could probably argue that they might be a richer company had they invested more in usability. So how do we do this? We know that what UX is, and we know that it's important. I should just say iPhone, iPod, iPad, because it's almost trite. You can't really have a conversation around these without talking about those things. So we know that investment, what Apple's doing in UX is highly profitable. So it's complicated and it's hard, but here's some best practices to kind of push through the barrier. And like I said before, this is kind of some of our background and as a company, and this is our process for pushing through UX design. I should say up front, I'm not going to tell you guys what color is the right color for an OK button, but more about how to make UX happen within your organization. So a guiding principle for all of these, always, and this should just be something that you could get tattooed in some black letter font across your back like a gangster, that you'll never lose focus on the end user. So law one is collaboration. Collaboration is key, and also never losing sight on the end user. So how's your organization set up? Are you is your software ruled by technology? How about design? Is it design who owns the software product? What about marketing? Maybe marketing owns it. Really, ideally, all three departments are collaborating, and a lot of times organizations simply are not. But we have some ways to help that collaboration happen, and to help maybe put the loving salve on or salve on the wounds that have been opened up between tech and marketing in a lot of organizations. Anyways, we walk in and see kind of a lot of silos, and how do we get the silos talking again? So we essentially define joint ownership, and you start to embrace conflict. So it becomes essentially the entire team's fault when a project fails to meet its objectives. There's no more finger pointing. It's everybody involved. I know this is hard. One rule is to not offshore your interface design or architecture, this is important. And I know there's some folks from Denmark that are great, design houses in Denmark and the Netherlands. But what we're really talking about here is that collaboration piece, right? That face-to-face time and throwing the sticky pads at each other, and having the tough conversations and things like that need to happen, and everybody needs to be involved for software to really be successful. So law number two, we keep talking about successful software. Well, you have to define it. You have to define what it means. So and in order for, you can't just say, oh, well, we're going to get more customers. Well, how many more customers? Put a number to things, right? So I think it's like the SMART is the acronym, where it's, is it SMART? Maybe I'm thinking about something else. I think I am thinking about something else. But it's basically, it's time boxed, it's defined, right? It's measurable. Maybe it is SMART. I don't remember all the letters, but time box it and make sure it's defined and measurable. Put numbers around it. Good success criteria has numbers involved, and not just ideas or concepts. List what also success looks like for your users, right? again, not losing sight of the users. We want you to be successful. You know, we want our clients to be successful. We want to be successful, but we also have to make sure that our users are successful as well. Law number 3 is valuing good design. So if you could think about 5 features that made you upgrade your operating system. And we're not talking about, you know, just buying a new computer, so that's not really upgrading. That's going out and buying the software and getting out the disk and going through that headache of installing a new operating system. And a lot of people don't, but the people who do, why would you? And really, here's kind of a timeline of Windows. Usually what it is it looks good. It feels good. It has a better user experience. And people are willing to jump through that process because it simply looks nicer than the old version, and they want it. So it's good design. It looks nice. This is just a little stab at, whatever, 1990 called and they want their interface back. I mean, that's not pretty. Ugliness doesn't sell, right? So So take time to understand the issues behind what people are telling you. Don't take it at face value. Law number 9, rigid plans are bound to fail. So software projects are predictably unpredictable. They really, really are, right? And so we have all these diagrams. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go from A to B to C, and we might go to, over here in this subplan, G or whatever, and we build diagrams, and we know, okay, we're going to track to this, and if we're not tracking to this, then we'll reassess and we'll replan, and that's actually good to reassess and replan, because your original plan isn't going to happen. Remember the on time, on budget, no difficult conversations upward, right? Upward should be in the same line. I guess there's a wrap issue, but yeah, so you don't have to tell anybody who's paying the bills for you, any bad conversations, right? Well, no, that doesn't really happen. If that happened, here's what our day would look like, right? Kick off, and we think really hard, and then we, requirements complete, and now we've got Friday open to solve world hunger. No, that's not going to happen. When you try to guess with future requirements, 50% of the time you're wrong, 49% of the time you're very, very wrong, right? And that's a lot of what, design and development and software building in general is a lot about discovery. And really what we're doing when we write down requirements and make a project plan is we're guessing. We're just simply guessing. And that's something to communicate, to evangelize, and to make sure that everybody accepts with, again, empathy and humility. We're guessing. So we have to be willing to throw away half of what we create, really. And again, that humility. So I'm not sure. Oh, we'll skip that one. So we have to value the product over the process, most certainly. And really, the scope ends up determining what the product is, doesn't it? They're one and the same when we talk about what is the scope of the product. Well, we're just really talking about what is the product. What is it that we're building? And so we get a lot of times sidelined in talking about scope. But I think that just basically kind of takes us away from the fact that this is the product, this is what we're shipping. So I think it's always really good to bring that back into perspective. Law number 10, this is the next to last one. Every product does need a vision. Now we talked about the big pitch, but this is a little bit different. When we go into an organization and we're talking about building a product for unicorns, we might have a situation where our CEO he's not super into fantasy, and unicorn's probably a bad example, but he's like, okay, is that the dude that's half horse? No, he's got bigger and more important things to really worry about than fantasy land. And then the product manager has this very idealized, it's the unicorn that she grew up knowing, and the designer has this very stylized unicorn that not everybody's really going to like, but he really likes it. And our developer just is wondering, what does a unicorn taste like? I wonder what that would be all about. So we try to get everybody on the same page here. And so one of the ways that we do that is with workshops, and we go in quite a bit of detail in the book about collaborating, getting everybody on the same page. And really what we talk about a lot is we're talking about, just backing up, to establish this vision. We're now on common vision, and a lot of ways we talk about, here's a good list to work at in your workshop. What is it that you're building, first and foremost? But then to focus it back on the user, what are their goals? What are their triggers? What's the context of use? This whole list is really a fantastic way to make sure that everybody is agreeing. All of those assumptions are laid bare, and we all have a common vision. And this is something that we can talk through, talk about the users, talk about the product. And this is a really great format to develop a commonly understood vision with all different stakeholders and all different departments. And there's different ways that you can communicate that vision. And again, this is something to, everybody, not too many people, I don't know if in your organization, but definitely in some of my previous organizations, we wrote these giant requirements documents and giant specification documents. And then you'd be really lucky if a third of the people who were working on a project ever read the things, right? They're like an inch thick, and they're boring as hell. And so what about breaking out of that paradigm? Drawing pictures instead. Okay, I'm running out of time. So experience maps are good, and I think that a lot of this will be, it'll be recorded, it'll be available. Prototypes are a fantastic way to communicate the vision. I want to leave time for QA. These are mood boards, and these establish a vision for the visual look and feel of what you're designing. Of course, we're familiar with wireframes. They help communicate the vision. Notice that all of these are visual, and visual communication is a lot easier to understand. Even for developers, a really good wireframe spec is typically a lot more fun to develop to than a requirements document and a prototype. And here's like a great way to get something real snazzy looking, snazzy presentation of your video can get even board of directors involved and excited, and it can help get your project funded. Here's something we did for Coca-Cola that, basically the Coca-Cola team wanted to get everybody in the company really excited about an opportunity that we saw for them. And this is kind of the way we did it. So, and finally, this is just like a quick law, though. Vision is great. Always, though, identify, build, and launch a quick win. Going back to ROI, identifying and prioritizing by the user something that is essential. Establishing ROI for UX just is your endeavor within your organization. The launch and quick win can help you be outrageously successful. So again, I'm John McRee, and I think we'll just open it up to Q&A. And let me escape out of this. I'm not exactly sure how this part goes. But if we have questions,
Hey, John, Catherine here.
yeah.
I told people if they have questions, go ahead and post them. And we did have a couple of questions earlier, and one was when you were talking about outsourcing your company, and I just wanted some clarification on that. Do you mean never outsource services?
No, not at all.
Right?
A lot of the, when we talk about, like, there are times, there are parts of the project that are great for outsourcing. They make a ton of sense to outsource. But a lot of that initial architecture and design, that process, we don't recommend outsourcing. A lot of companies even try to outsource. They're like, okay, we have an idea. They've written it down in some requirements documents, and then they outsource that. They send that overseas, and some other team, toils away, and then it presents back to them something. And so the communication game can be really tough. So we don't recommend that. Now, when you are outsourcing like development or kind of production design, we really recommend using prototypes even more than, I think it becomes even more important to have visual feedback rather than requirements documents when you're outsourcing production or development work. Again, it just communicates to developers a lot more effectively. This is the type of thing that we want to build. This doesn't work, but it could, and we want you to make it work. So, yeah.
Okay, good. And let's see. Oops, sorry.
I think the PowerPoint will be...
You're still sharing your desktop, by the way. Do you want me to go back to the lobby? I'll do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we can see.
Yeah.
And yes, and so Andy was saying that you actually said offshore rather than outsource. And do you mean not to send things overseas to other countries? Sorry.
No, I mean, well, yeah. So that's kind of the idea. Like, there's been a model. You know, and this will be somewhat controversial, I'm sure, but there's been a model where obviously we've had a lot of success in organizations to send their work overseas, and yeah, I'm talking offshore, not outsourcing. Outsourcing, obviously, I mean that's you know, we're a services company, and so we're constantly engaging companies to outsource. But no, I'm talking about offshoring, and it's simply, you know, a little bit of the time difference and the collaboration. Now, I think that some organizations and some individuals, we work with people, and some of our developers spend, you know, half their time in Ireland or whatever. And I think that if you have some practices in place, that really can be totally minimized, and you can still be very collaborative. You don't have to have that face time. But face time is so incredibly important, and not a lot of organizations will really spend the time or the money. Usually if it's being offshored, if they want that collaboration and face time, then the price starts going up, and so they start losing return. So that's kind of what that idea is about. I'm not saying outsourcing, offshoring. Sorry.
Okay, good. And a couple things. I know we're almost out of time. People are asking if you would be willing to share a copy of your slides. And I told everyone that we are recording this, and we'll have the recording available shortly, after, probably tomorrow, and send around the link. But do you share copies of your slides, or do you guard those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let me see. Is it possible for you to post them on your?
Yeah, I think we have some on SlideShare.
Okay.
Even available now. I think there's a really similar deck with a lot of the stats and stuff like that, and a lot of the rules on there. Yeah, so we can definitely do that. As far as like wireframing and those type of things, yeah, OmniGraffle's great. Balsamic is really cool. You know, we've seen at a previous incarnation, I used Axure. That was when I had to write a lot of specs, and that worked really well. At Effective, we actually kind of leave it up to the design team to decide what they want to use, and as long as it all comes out kind of looking nice, you know, we always have, like, of course, really nice polished deliverables, which I think is also really valuable within an organization. If you're working if you're an in-house designer, if your deliverables look really sweet and you have a really nice-looking template, again, you're just going to get adoption within your organization even more. And so I know there's a lot of discussion about what's the best thing to use, but whatever helps you get the job done. I think that in some of the canned wireframe software, they can, if you're not careful, you might limit yourself a little bit in terms of controls, because you'll use the drag and drop, you know, stencils for controls rather than really think about, you know, is this the best control? Might there be some other way to interact with this? So I think that a lot of the time that stuff is really great, but sometimes you can get you know, locked in a pattern, and opening something that's far more open, like, you know, Illustrator, or we use Fireworks an awful lot, although I'm not personally really super stoked on Fireworks. That's you know, it opens up some possibilities for you.
Okay, thanks for addressing that, John. And then, oh yeah, here's a question. John is asking, how does your book differ from your presentation?
Okay, yeah, so the book goes into a lot of, there's quite a bit of background on design. We have a lot more on user research and conducting user research. We have a little bit more on what a team looks like and you know, how to construct a team, roles and responsibilities, things like that. We talk about different development patterns, like, you know, waterfall versus agile versus mixed versus what we see a big trend in, which is big design up front, we call it, where it's kind of like a hybrid of waterfall. It's trying to become agile, and kind of what some pros and cons and strategies around all of those things are. You know, we're not advocates of waterfall, but we have some tips, like if you have to do waterfall, then, you know, please try to do this. And so that's a lot of it. We go into details about different types of deliverables that can communicate different types of things, and then also following up on projects. And I know this is really, really high level, but, you know, when a project is done and kicked off, we lose sight of the fact that it's going out, it's going live, and people are going to start hitting it and complaining about it and doing all kinds of stuff. And a lot of our resources are now going to go into supporting this thing that's live and you know, and breathing and is troublesome, right? So planning for that is just as important for, you know, planning on the launch. And I liken that to like having a baby. You know, if any of you have kids, you know, your first child, you're so focused on the pregnancy and what is the birth going to be like and how are you going to get through that, and then suddenly you've got this kid living with you, and it's like, oh my gosh, we didn't even think about this. And that's what launching software can sometimes be like. So what do? You know, how do you plan for the aftermath of you know, living with this software that you've created?
Great. Well, I know we're running out of time, so I think we're going to need to wrap it up. But I just want to say thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, John. That was a wonderful presentation. I know I can tell from the comments that people have enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. So I had a question about the chat file. We can pull the chat file and send it to you later. If you try to copy it now, you won't get the whole thing. So if you want a copy of the chat file, please send email to webcast@o'reilly.com, and you'll get a copy of it. Plus, we'll have playback in a couple ways. We'll have the archived Adobe Connect playback, which is just like this. Links are live. You can navigate through the slides, etc. Or we'll also post it as a movie on YouTube, so you can watch it there. So we'll send that information out to everyone. John, I just want to say thank you again. It was really, really great presentation.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much, and it was really my pleasure, and good luck.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to end the phone now and close the window in just a minute. So thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.